We are beginning a new Sunday morning series here at Christ focused on Jesus, and our brief weekly Bible studies will also focus on the same topic. This week we begin with Jesus Beginnings, and that will take us all the way up through Christmas. Then into the new year we will talk about Jesus' mission and ministry. During Lent, the theme will be Jesus, Servant King. And then at Easter and following Easter, it will be Jesus' resurrection. So we're making a big leap here from talking about Moses all the way to Jesus, but actually the point of connection is very nicely made in Exodus 25. Moses is leading the people of Israel through the wilderness. Actually, God is, with a pillar of cloud by day and a fire by night. And as they go through the wilderness, God shows up. How does God show up? Well, finally in Exodus 25, the people are given the blueprints to build the tabernacle, a large worship tent. And within that large worship tent, God would come and be among the people. The Shekinah of God, the glory of God would appear in the tabernacle. We move to the New Testament, Jesus Beginnings, and we're not just going to start with the Christmas stories in Bethlehem that Matthew and Luke have with wise men, with shepherds and evil kings, and that whole story. We'll get to that here at church when we get later into December. But we're going to start Jesus Beginnings way back at the beginning, and we're going to look at how Jesus showed up with God in creation. And even in the Old Testament, how some of these things pointed to Jesus. And we'll get back to the tabernacle in just a minute. As we talk about Jesus' beginnings, I want to talk about what we find in the Gospel of John. John 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. That's the beginning. Jesus, the Word of God, is with God at the very beginning, and if he is there with God in the beginning of creation, then it is logical to say that he shows up in the Old Testament in places, and this tabernacle story is a prefiguring of Jesus. Now, one of my favorite Bible verses is John 3:16, but I'm wondering in the Gospel of John if there is a greater Bible verse than John 3:16. Maybe there is, or at least it's equal. And it's in John chapter 1. It's not verses 1, 2, and 3. I mean, those are great verses. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. But if you jump ahead to John 1:14, it says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. The Greek word there is actually pitched a tent. Tabernacled, again, that takes us back to what? Exodus 25, where the glory of God shows up in the midst of the people in a worship tent. And why is this a great Bible verse? Maybe greater than John 3:16, because we see how we are invited into the story of God and Jesus. And God comes to be in our midst, not in a worship tent, not in a sanctuary, but in the person of Jesus himself. The Word becomes flesh. John, later in the Gospel and in the epistles of John, he says, and we have touched this Word. We know what we're talking about. You can't argue with us that this did not happen. This is a fleshly, incarnate, human thing that we've been a part of it, and it is remarkable. The Word becomes flesh and makes its dwelling among us. Pitches a tent. Maybe you've taken the kids or grandkids camping. Our kids grew up camping. And we would maybe stretch out a camping trip to 2 weeks. And it's tough. And you're close to the ground. And things happen when you're camping. Well, the people of Israel, they went camping for 40 years to learn the lesson, how they needed to trust and obey God. And God would show up to help them. And in John 1:14, Jesus shows up. He goes on a camping trip in our midst to bless us with his presence, with the promise of new life and salvation. So this is a great Bible verse. Maybe greater than John 3:16. Maybe it's equal. You want to remember this Bible passage, though. And we see here in Jesus, let me just conclude this brief Bible study, and you'll have to worship with us online. ChristLasVegas.org is the website. Facebook Live is online, or you can be here 8:15, 9:45 Sunday morning. I will flesh this out in a greater way on Sunday morning. But in Jesus, we see clearly who God is. We see who God is. Jesus in the New Testament isn't just appealing to God through prayer and praying, God, just be a little more compassionate to these people. God, just forgive these people. No, God shows up in Jesus, the Word made flesh. And we see who God truly is by this compassionate, merciful figure of Jesus. So we see who God is in Jesus, and we're given an example, not that we can be Jesus. Although the reformer Luther would say we can be a little Christ to our neighbor, we are given an example of what life can be like in God's kingdom for us. It's sort of like how we can aspire to live. Not that we're getting there, not that we're going to be perfect, but we can see God in Jesus, and we can see how we can be a little bit better in Jesus also. So join us for worship Sunday morning here at Christ on campus, 8:15, 9:45, of course, Facebook Live. God bless, and please have a great week.